She had us, both of us, absolutely round her finger. Fundamentally, she achieved this through the way she looked at us. Now, it shouldn't have been a surprise that the way she'd move her head to one side, she'd leave me basically on my knees, or more akin, I should say, to a slightly tepid pool of just water. But what was more surprising was the effect it had on him. Anything she wanted, he gave her. Anything she demanded, he agreed to. And he agreed to everything with this same little smile on his face. The smile of a man who is in actual fact a little more than 4 years old. I'm not saying I wouldn't have agreed to the same and more in his position. But there was something about it that was in some way, downright surprising? Coming from him? He wasn't that kind of man. He was a soldier. And when I say was, I mean he used to be. Between 1968 and 1984, he was a soldier in the British infantry. He reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. He did 5 tours of Northern Ireland, and this was when, doing a tour of Northern Ireland was a little more than a few games of pool and a chat with some kids outside a fish and chip shop. Some of the photographs he took. He used to have this Polaroid camera, and some of the things that after he'd had a few drinks, he'd get out of his box to show me. You wouldn't have thought they're of Northern Ireland. There's something about them I found in some way surprising. He always refused to talk about South Georgia. Never mentioned it. I asked him about it once, and his face turned within the matter of a few seconds, literally grey, slate grey. And even after he eventually retired from the army, he retrained as a maths teacher, for Christ's sake. I would have loved to have seen him teach. I can imagine the kind of teacher he was. I don't think he would have worn too many cords. I don't think he would have shared too many coffees with the sixth formers. Come and play with me. Read me a story. Can I sit on your lap? Oh, where's Grandpops? Oh, there he is. Just not his kind of scene, But he did it. With her. The first thing I learned about photography, I learned when I was a kid. If you're taking a portrait photograph, if at all possible, try and take it from below the subject. What it does is it renders the subject, actually oddly what it does is it renders the subject not more heroic, not more godlike. Oddly it renders them more human. And if you can take it in natural light, if you can capture the way the light falls at the start or at the end of the day especially, then it can be... He used to try to convince me that the existence of, the discovery of, and the understanding of the relevance, possible uses of the irrational number, which is commonly and historically and internationally referred to as pi, that is, to 5 decimal places, the number 3.14159, is irrevocable proof of the existence of God. It's just so illogical, he told us, that it could ever work, that it must just prove that there is something more than just us. And it's just so incredible that we should discover it, that proves something. I think he's wrong. I told him, I think you're wrong. I said, for someone so palpably intelligent, Arthur, sometimes you think as if your head is full of wool. He liked me. I never got too cross. We used to sit and talk about beer together. Never bothered him that my parents came from... He used to watch an unusual amount of tennis. Everything was tennis with him. His conversations were peppered with tennis metaphors. Sometimes I'd sit and watch tennis with him. Never liked it much. Is it such a terrible thing to say that sometimes the company of men is in some way comforting? I don't mean it to sound, I don't mean it to sound in any other way than... He used to have a house in the eastern suburbs of Toulon, in a town called Cacaran. And the south of fucking France, for fuck's sake. When I go there with Helen for the first time, we drive in her car. She's a kind of mix between being a little bit embarrassed because, well, ostensibly at least, at the time we're, socialists? And just being really fucking proud because her dad has a house in the south of France and she's driving us there and she paid for the ferry because I'm fucking skint. She keeps going on about how odd he is, but that she has a feeling that she thinks I'll like him. And I do. She says that's one of the things she likes about me. I like people like me. They think I'm gentle. I had absolutely no idea people thought I was gentle. And she says she likes this bit. This bit is the best bit of a man, she says, which is a phrase that just about sends me completely insane with love for her and her nose and her smile and everything. Lucy was a cesarean, and when Helen was in labour, there was a moment where I thought she might have died. And I'm a bit embarrassed now because I had to go into the toilets to change into my, what are they called? Scrubs, is it? And when I changed into my scrubs, I did have a bit of a cry. And when I did ask God, who I don't even fucking think is even there in the fucking first place, to make sure that Helen would be alright. I said we can survive if we lose the baby, but I don't think I could make it if Helen went and died on me. It's like talking to a photograph or a mirror. It's the same effect, which isn't to discount it completely, but it's not God. The second time I go to his house, after me and Helen have been going out for 2 years now, he takes me diving. He's become a big fan of scuba diving in the 18 months that me and Helen have been going out. Which is a surprising character development for a man of his age, but he's a surprising man. Between Saint-Tropez and the Ile de Poquerolles, there are these actual shipwrecks that you can actually dive on. Would I like to come? I've never worn a wetsuit before, and it takes me a little longer to get into than I'd hoped, which makes me feel a bit fat. He says he's going to take us to the sea wall. I ask him the what? He says the sea wall. This makes no sense to me at all. There's a wall in the sea. It drops down hundreds of feet. I had absolutely no idea the seabed was made like that. I thought it was a gradual slope. He's brought us these little bags with bits of bread in, and you to feed the fish with. And you hold them upside down to swim with, so you don't lose the bits of bread, because naturally they float upwards. And he takes us to the sea wall. In swimming there, even as bright as it is with the sun above us, and it is a bright day, even then, the darkness that the fall of the wall in the sea reveals is as terrifying as anything I've ever seen. You get back to the surface, and of course the idea that there ever wasn't a seawall down there in the first place is frankly quite embarrassing, to be honest. I mean, what did I think the seabed was made of? When Helen's giving birth to Lucy, the midwife calls to me, "Daddy, do you want to see your baby being born?" They built this little tent, and I peer over the edge of the tent, and I'm one of those people that never knows what to look at when someone points something out to me. Like I'm a kid, and we're driving along, and my mum goes, "Oh look, a kestrel," or "Oh look, a plane," and I don't have the faintest idea what to look at. So I just nod and smile dumbly and go, "Oh yeah," but I'm completely lying. Well, this is a bit like that. Mainly I see the yellow of the inside of her stomach. I think when you've seen the inside of someone's stomach, your relationship with that person moves to, what, a new level. I love her. Completely. With every bone and bit of skin of me. And it's been rare in our relationship when she's cried and I've comforted her. I'm fucking crying all the fucking time. I can't even watch an episode of ER without just being an absolute wreck. I cry at ground force when the person comes home and they've had their garden done up as a surprise. We go there to his house for our holidays every year. We did drive. 3 years straight, we drove all the way from London without stopping. We took it in turns driving. We did kind of promise to take it in turns navigating too, but neither of us needed any help. We did it just fine. When Lucy was born, though, we started flying because, well, the driving's not fair on a baby and because he'd pay for the tickets. You get tickets to Carcassonne for dead cheap, but he'd pay for us to fly into Nice and he'd hire us a car when we got there. The first time he sees her, he takes her by surprise a bit. He looms over from behind her and he's wearing his glasses, these big old glasses, and he's a very, very tall man. And he takes her by surprise and she screams like living shit, believe me. It took her about 3 weeks to get over that one, but she did. And then she'd start with a shuffling across the floor to reach him and putting her hands up and making these funny little noises that basically meant, put me on your lap and read me a story now, you funny old fucker. I don't care if you're meant to be weird. I don't care if you're meant to be scary. I don't fucking care what anyone fucking thinks about you. I want a story and I want it now. Who could resist that? She starts wearing cardigans and that is me done for. I asked him one time, if there's a God, is he a man? The question catches him by surprise a little bit, but after a while he says that, yes, in the end he thinks that God is probably a man. And so I say, well, what does he look like? Does he have a beard? Does he wear robes? Does he have long white hair? And he says, well, the thing about God is, Alex, whatever you think he looks like, well, he will look the absolute opposite to that. And whatever you think he is least likely to look like, well, then that is what he will look like. And so I ask him if he means that God looks a little bit like Gary Glitter. And he tells me to stop being so bloody stupid. But I say, well, if you can't tell me what he looks like, if you don't know what he looks like and he doesn't look like anything, then how do you know he's anything more than just an idea? Just something you made up. She's 8. We've been going every year. We've talked for years about having a second child, but every time we talk about it, we just think about Lucy and we think, you know what, we're very happy. She's just, we just want her. She's clever. She's funny. She's very, very pretty. She's Helen's sidekick. She's my sweetheart. The two of them make wisecracks about me. They stand there sizing me up. But I know that if they take it too far, then she'll come running over to me and put her arms around me, because the idea of it actually properly making me sad makes her feel a bit sick. In the 8 years since she's been born, I've fucked up a lot of things. And somehow, by the skin of my teeth, managed to largely come out unscathed. And me and Helen, we're doing okay. We've got these routines and stuff, like about the shopping or the dishwasher or the cooking, because I love cooking for her, right? But in comparison to her, I'm shit at it. So when she cooks, it's a proper treat. And we've got these routines and stuff, but it's like, we fucking love them, you know? Rather than finding them, restricting. You know when you're swimming in the sea, sometimes the force of the waves can crash right against you, it can knock you over. There have been times when, just trying to get out of the sea, I've been knocked over. 2 summers ago this happened, and I cracked my coccyx on a stone on the shore's edge, and I flailed about like some kind of huge seal on my back. I was, at that exact moment, the mathematical polar opposite to Daniel Craig. It's not normally like this, where he is. Normally the sea's warm there, which is an unusual feeling for me, of course. I always swim out as far as I think is safe, and then turn, and then swim back 10 strokes, and then stop, and then swim again. Sometimes you think the tide's caught you. You panic because you think you're not moving. You are. You just got to turn on your back, collect your breathing, kick slowly. You're moving. I say to him, where is he? He says, who? I say, God, where is he? Is he in the sky? Because that's where people used to think he was, children and medieval people. Is he on the edge of our solar system? Is he on the edge of our galaxy? Because every time we think we've located where God must be, we learn something new, and we realise actually God can't be there. So is he 15 billion light years away? Is he on the very edges of our universe, the parts of the universe that make up the time of the Big Bang, that have that kind of heavy density? Is that it? Is that where he is? And he says, we don't know everything, Alex. There are some things we don't know. There are some things we can't explain. I tell him now. He says, what? I say there are some things we can't explain now, but that doesn't mean they don't have any reason. It just illustrates the gaps in our knowledge. It doesn't mean that one day we won't be able to explain them. Because I really think that we will. I want to acknowledge something, and it's a bit embarrassing because I know it's something you would have noticed. There's a hole running through the centre of my stomach. You must have all felt a bit awkward because you can probably see it even in this light. Most people tend to try and ignore it, but some people say that, yes, they're sorry, but they can see my hole. What's that, Alex? They say. You appear to have a great big hole running through the middle of you. Started doing okay, you know? I'd got a... Sounds stupid, but I got a contract with British Home Stores, taking the photographs for their catalogues and their websites, and I took the photos for their menswear, women's wear, back to school stuff, homeware. I made so much money just taking photographs of cushions and saucepans and digital alarm clocks. I could barely believe it myself. Five weeks ago, just before we go, just before the frantic stuff, about packing and what we're going to take, Helen's bought some stuff for us to take with us. She's bought Lucy all of her new stuff, her dresses, her cosy, her books and toys for the plane. And she's bought me some new shades, which were properly pucker. Seriously, very Poncherello from Chips. And she asked me to come into the bedroom because there's something that she wants to show me. She's wearing this dress, this blue dress with a dropped back. She asked me to tell her what I think of it. I swear for about 30 seconds I couldn't speak. She looked... And the idea that I was married to her and that we had our little girl and that this was our life. We visit a man in the market in Port Grimont on our second day there. And he sells us a case of claret for the equivalent of like 15 quid, and it is like heaven. We drink 2 bottles on our second night there. The next day, Helen has to go to the supermarket because we need some bread and some shampoo for Lucy and some athlete's foot cream for me. And we love these, they've got these little yogurt pots, these little vanilla flavoured yogurt pots that you can't get in Britain. And she wants to get some cheese. And it's more fun getting it from the market, but as it goes, it's a proper rip-off. So she wants to go to the supermarket, which is where most of the French people go anyway. So Arthur and me go down with Lucy, down to the sea. There's a bay near his house. Around the corner from the bay, there's a little cove that you can climb onto. And it's actually closer to his house anyway, and it's more secluded and it's quiet and it's lovely, and we talk about it and we decide to go there. She can go into this little world. Did you ever know any kids like that? If she thinks no one's looking, she just goes further and further into her own imagination, playing games all by herself. Actually, what she's doing, she's talking to herself, which some people might find disconcerting, but I just love to watch her. He says to me one time, he looks at me and he says to me, he's in the feeling of water. Sometimes there's the shape of the roll of the land. He's in the way some people move. He's in the way the light falls over a city at the start of an evening. He's in the space between 2 numbers. Do you want to know the cruelest thing I ever did to anybody was? I'll tell you. I'd started getting into detective fiction. I've got a friend that works at St Mary's University and he tells me, Alex, all fiction is detective fiction? He's completely wrong. Jane Austen isn't detective fiction. Franz Kafka isn't detective fiction. Bridget Jones is not detective fiction. Detective fiction is detective fiction. James Ellroy. Arthur's gone for a swim. I'm reading L.A. Noire, the bit where the cop meets the murderer in the car park at midnight, neither knowing if the other one is there. The lights are all out. Lucy's kind of being a Power Ranger. The sun is gorgeous. Oh, I've got my shades on, it's so bright. Arthur comes back from his swim. The water's amazing, he says. He dries off and I notice his feet. the skin on his feet has become unusually cracked and battered, and it's kind of one of those moments you actually rumble he's a little old. He tells me I can go for a swim. I do. The water is amazing. I wade past the first bank, get past all the seaweed, and I swim out and out and out and around the bay. And the light, at that time of day, the light on the Mediterranean is... And the sea's warm. I turn back. And I'm about 20 yards out. The sky is this huge blue curve. I can see the houses at the top of the road. I can see his house. I can see the swimmers around the corner of the bay. And I can see Arthur reading his book. He's reading some history of China, really into it. The towel wrapped around his legs, and water dripping onto his book. I can see all this from here with real detail. I can see Lucy playing on the rocks behind him, running a bit, playing Power Rangers. And it's... I can watch them as she kind of does a little bit of a jump. And it's odd because he's so into his book that he doesn't notice that she loses her footing on the sand and the gravel of the rocks there, and she slips and stumbles. And she's quite close to one of the edges of the rock there, and what she does is she tries to correct her balance, but in trying to correct the balance of her weight, she actually puts more weight on her back foot, which slips out from underneath her. And it's weird to watch because she does actually fall off this 6-foot high cliff on the rocks there, and she falls backwards and she cracks her head on one of the rocks that are jutting out at the bottom of the cliff. I can see all this clearly, but I can't hear anything, and it's weird watching it with no sound, like when the sound's off on the telly, it's always a bit strange. It takes a while to register before I turn and swim back to the shore. Now I'm not thinking, so I swim faster and faster and faster, which is stupid because I'm panicking. And when you panic, you don't breathe properly, and I just keep telling myself, just focus on your breathing, focus on your breathing. I can kind of watch him between strokes. He's thrown his book down, he's jumped off the cliff. And there's this other couple there that I didn't notice before, and then they've stopped their sunbathing and they've run towards where she is. I notice him pick her up. He's torn between running back to the house to call an ambulance and waiting for me. And I get there in enough time for him not to have to worry about this for too long. I go to her. I take her from him. What there is, which is strange to me, is there is a clump of blood in her hair. It's all thick and matted, and her hair is chewed up by it. I read that it's a process, that it's never absolutely instantaneous. The injury causes the death of brain cells, and so signals are no longer sent to the lungs, and bit by bit, machine shuts down. Her blood sticks to my hands. I carry her up the path to the cove, and I haven't bothered getting dried. People are staring at me, stopping still in their tracks and talking French to me. And I'm kind of aware that I'm not crying, and I look like fuck. I don't know. I go to the house, and as I'm getting through the glass sliding doors, I bang her head on the wall, and I'm talking to her, which is stupid because, you know, and I tell her I'm sorry for hitting her head. But part of me is just thinking, well, fuck it now. What the fuck does it fucking matter now, huh? I may as well just drag her by her fucking ankles. This bit of meat. This bit of meat and air. I remember being a bit astonished because one of the paramedics could speak English, quite good English, actually. He'd lived in Portsmouth. And I remember thinking, why the fuck did you live in Portsmouth of all places? Gudunk. Sound of her closing the door with her bags full of yogurt and shampoo and cheese and bread takes me completely by surprise. She looks at me across his house. She's wearing her sunglasses to protect her against the light. Oh, Jesus fuck. He's sat on his sofa, still wrapped in his towel. He is a man that is completely broken, shattered form. The little noises he makes. I leaned over the desk at check-in at Nice, and we'd been taken to the front of the queue. We'd actually been given an upgrade. And while the woman there was sorting this out for us, I look over her at the sheet that she's checking off on her desk. And there's a list of passengers and crew and baggage. And at the bottom of the list, it read, human remains, which was a bit... We sit there, the three of us in the departure lounge. We can't really touch each other, we can't look at each other or anybody else. I turn to him, and this is the cruelest thing I ever did to anybody else. And don't forget, you know, I've known this man for 10 years, and I love him. I turn to him and I say to him, you get back to London and the noise of the place, and the colour and the dirt and the roar of it. I can't actually, what I can't do for now at least is work. There's a lie at the heart of photography that I've always cherished. When you take a photograph of something, what you do is you actually freeze something that's alive. To do this properly, you need more than anything to believe in life. As a baby, crying outside the window, and in his laugh there is absolutely no joy or humour. Beep, beep. This vehicle is reversing. Beep, beep. I have a complete and total inability to cry. You see, when people say to you that they can't imagine not believing in anything because it would just be too depressing, there is something so sick about that. The level of cowardice in that is just so unbearable to me. I've been home 3 weeks now. If this could happen, anything could happen. Just now, there was a couple outside arguing in the street, and it looked like they were trying to copy soap characters in the way that they argued, as though the only way they'll ever get close to being famous is by actually arguing in the street as if they're actually on EastEnders. The misery and the emptiness and the vacuous fucking shitness of their lives is so considerable that the proximity and behaviour to soap characters acts as some kind of consolation. Helen moves about the house. I'm holding my entire head together. The skin and the shell of me. I'm absolutely falling inside myself. But you can see that, you can see the, in my, just because we don't know, doesn't mean we won't know. We just don't know yet. But I think one day we will. I think we will.